Netanyahu meets with Biden and Harris to narrow gaps on a Gaza war ceasefire deal. President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, the presumptive Democratic nominee, met separately at the White House on Thursday to discuss the conflict in Gaza and the potential for a ceasefire agreement. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was also present. Netanyahu's inaugural visit to the White House since 2020 occurs one day following his impassioned address to Congress and amid mounting pressure in the United States and Israel to resolve the 9-month conflict that has resulted in over 39,000 fatalities in Gaza and approximately 1,200 in Israel. Hamas continues to hold numerous Israeli hostages. Harris stated in her remarks following what she termed a frank and constructive meeting with the Israeli leader that she endorses Israel's right to self-defense. However, she emphasized that the manner in which it does so is crucial. She expressed her apprehension regarding the devastating humanitarian situation in Gaza and the images of civilians who were slain in the conflict, stating, "We cannot turn a blind eye to these tragedies." She concurred with Biden's call for a prompt ceasefire to temporarily halt the conflict, in order to increase humanitarian aid to Gaza and free some of the most vulnerable detainees from Hamas's custody. White House officials have stated that the negotiations are nearing their conclusion. However, there are still matters that require resolution. White House National Security spokesman John Kirby stated, "The gaps are closable." He further stated, "However, it will necessitate, as it consistently does, some leadership and compromise." In the Eisenhower Executive Office building, Harris convened with Netanyahu in her ceremonial office. She is also anticipated to exert pressure on him to negotiate a deal for the release of the captives who were abducted during Hamas' attack on Israel on October 7, which began the conflict. "We have a great deal to discuss," Harris stated as she greeted the Israeli leader. He responded, "Yes, we do." Harris condemned those who were violent or used rhetoric that praised Hamas during Netanyahu's visit to Washington, where protests by thousands were held. On Friday, Netanyahu will travel to Florida to meet with the Republican presidential nominee. He was last at the White House during the former President Donald Trump's tenure. Over the years, the relationship between the centrist Democrat Biden and the conservative Likud party leader Netanyahu has been characterized by ups and downs. In what is expected to be his final White House encounter with Biden, Netanyahu reflected on their 40-year friendship and expressed gratitude to the president for his service. "As a proud Jewish Zionist and an Irish-American Zionist, I am grateful for your 50 years of public service and your unwavering support for the State of Israel," Netanyahu informed Biden at the commencement of their meeting. A legacy-affirming accomplishment for Biden, who abandoned his re-election campaign and endorsed Harris, would be a U.S.-backed proposal to release the remaining detainees in Gaza over 3 phases. Harris may also leverage it to her advantage in her pursuit of his position. Biden and Netanyahu convened with the families of American hostages subsequent to their discussions. Harris views her encounter with Netanyahu as an opportunity to exhibit her capacity to assume the role of commander-in-chief. Republicans are attempting to portray her as insufficient in her support for Israel, while those on the political left argue that Biden has not done enough to compel Netanyahu to end the conflict. She is currently under scrutiny. A senior administration official who briefed reporters on the condition of anonymity under ground guidelines established by the White House, stated that there is no daylight between the president and vice president on Israel. Harris's most recent one-on-one interaction with Netanyahu occurred in March 2021. However, she has participated in over 20 telephone conversations between Biden and Netanyahu. Netanyahu is currently endeavoring to navigate his own precarious political situation. He is under pressure from the families of detainees, who are requesting a ceasefire agreement to return their loved ones, and from far-right members of his governing coalition, who are urging him to resist any agreement that could prevent Israeli forces from eliminating Hamas. Netanyahu delivered a forceful defense of Israel's actions during the conflict and attacked the International Criminal Court's allegations of Israeli war crimes during his address to a joint session of Congress on Wednesday. He argued that Israel was effectively defending our shared interests in the Middle East by keeping Americans' boots off the ground in its struggle against Iran-backed Hamas. "Keep in mind that our adversaries are also your adversaries," Netanyahu stated. "It is your fight, not ours. And our triumph will be your triumph." In the aftermath of the October 7 attack, Netanyahu utilized his speech to appreciate Biden for the support provided by his administration. However, he also observed that Trump's actions during his 4-year term were advantageous to Israel. These actions included acknowledging Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights, confronting Iran's hostilities, and relocating the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. On Wednesday, Netanyahu disparaged the demonstrators who gathered in the vicinity of the U.S. Capitol, referring to them as useful idiots from Iran. On Thursday, Harris expressed her indignation at the act of some demonstrators tagging areas near the U.S. Capitol with pro-Hamas graffiti, expressing support for the militants, and burning a U.S. flag at Union Station. In a statement, Harris declared that pro-Hamas graffiti and rhetoric are abhorrent and must not be tolerated in our nation. I abhor the act of burning the American flag. The flag is a representation of the promise of America and a symbol of our nation's highest ideals. It should never be desecrated in that manner. On Thursday, protesters gathered in the vicinity of the White House, shouting, "Arrest Netanyahu." They also carried in an effigy of the Prime Minister, who was depicted in an orange jumpsuit and had blood on his hands. Israeli flags were draped around the shoulders of a tiny number of counter-protesters. Harris, who had engagements in Indiana and Texas on Wednesday, was criticized by Trump and his Republican allies for neglecting to attend Netanyahu's address to Congress. The vice president, who serves as the president of the Senate, would typically co-preside over such an occasion with the House Speaker, Republican Mike Johnson. According to officials at the White House, her absence was not minimal and was exclusively the result of scheduling conflicts. Sen. J.D. Vance, the Republican vice presidential nominee, also declined to attend the speech in order to campaign. Biden, in his capacity as vice president, declined to attend Netanyahu's address to Congress in 2015. Harris has consistently expressed her unwavering support for Israel. A resolution opposing a UN Security Council resolution condemning Israel was introduced by her as one of her first acts in office. Her first overseas voyage of her Senate career was to Israel in early 2017. She has also discussed her personal connections to Israel, such as her memories of raising money as a child to plant trees in Israel, installing a mezuzah near the front door of the vice president's residence in Washington. Her husband is Jewish, and her affiliations with pro-Israel organizations such as the conservative American Israel Public Affairs Committee and the liberal J Street. Harris has largely maintained a consistent stance with Biden throughout the conflict. However, there have been instances in which she has emerged as a leading proponent of the administration's more severe rhetoric regarding Israel. In March, she delivered a high-profile address in Selma, Alabama, the day before she met with Netanyahu rival and Israeli War Cabinet member Benny Gantz. During the speech, she condemned the inhumane conditions that Palestinians were experiencing and urged Israel to take additional measures to alleviate the suffering of civilians in Gaza.